A boy named Jimmy. My story started at the beginning of the week. You see, me and my best friend Hugh loved to salvage junk that interested us. After all, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Anyway, we were hauling a chair to the dump, too old and useless to salvage, and on the way out I tripped on what appeared to be a briefcase. Though it was eerily new, curiosity got the best of me and Hugh, so I checked to see if it was open, and sure enough, it was. Before I could check its contents, Hugh quickly rushed me out of the dump, reminding me that the man who ran the dump absolutely hated when people took things from the dump. We rushed upstairs like madmen when we got back to Hugh's house. We ran into Hugh's room as I fumbled open the briefcase, my hands shaking with excitement. Click. It opened up, revealing 3 VHS tapes labeled Jimmy Part 1, Jimmy Part 2, and Jimmy Part 3. Hugh luckily had a VHS in his room, so we popped in Jimmy Part 1 and began watching. It was a man telling a small group of children a story called A Boy Named Jimmy. It was about, well, a boy named Jimmy, who was to go into the woods. One day, he went deeper than usual, and when his mom called him, he tried to go home, but found he was lost. Though with his love of the woods, he had enough survival skills to last him a week. He finally made it home a week later, but when he arrived, his parents had been gutted and were dead. The tape abruptly ended there. Me and Hugh, both curious and creeped out beyond belief, we quickly popped Jimmy Part 2 into the VHS. It was of a different man telling a very similar story. It was of the same name, A Boy Named Jimmy, though the Jimmy in the story hated going into the woods, which is why he started that when he got lost in the woods. This time, his parents went looking for him. Surely enough, they found his corpse and got lost as well. To survive, they began feeding off bugs, then birds, then the corpse of their own son. Seth turned them into cannibals, and they got home eventually. They grew hungry when they remembered their other son, who was also named Jimmy. Odd. Was every boy in these stories named Jimmy? Anyway, the mother called her other son over, and the parents waited, and waited, and waited. After a few days of waiting, the two began picking at each other, and more, until they eventually gutted each other. After a week of waiting, Jimmy came home, devastated at what his eyes met. No one knew what happened to the last surviving member of Jimmy's immediate family. Just disappeared. Then the narrator began describing Jimmy's house. This is where things began to get scary. Every detail of Jimmy's house matched up that of Hugh's house. Every crack in the wall, every hallway, even the locked basement door was perfectly detailed. Me and Hugh froze up completely when he finished detailing the house. It was too similar to Hugh's house to shake off the idea that it wasn't a true story, and that Hugh wasn't living in the same house that Jimmy lived in, or even the idea that the reason the basement door was locked was because Jimmy had hidden there.
And that's when we heard a loud bang downstairs. We both froze in fear, unable to move until the noise got closer. Then when we did a quick game of rock, paper, scissors to see who would have to close and lock the door so that thing that used to be human couldn't get in. I was the one who had to close the door, of course. I inched towards the door slowly, and the noise getting closer. Finally, right as I swore was outside the door, I jumped at the door, slammed it shut, locked it, and even propped the knob up with the chair just for safety. Me and he nearly trampled each other to death, putting Jimmy Part 3 in the VHS. This one was the same man from Jimmy Part 1. He was just sitting there motionless as the parents of the crying children as he told the story to pick them up. Eventually, everyone left the building, leaving the narrator in the darkness. We could barely see in the penumbra of the room. Suddenly, something ran across the stream. That's when the narrator broke down crying. The video was getting closer and eventually attacked and killed him. The video then cut to the message that read out, "If you are reading this, you have seen me being killed by that thing that used to be a child. My partner should be telling the children the other side of the story." Yes, that was a part of the full story, you see. As you already know, the story is true. What you don't know is that the story we read to the viewer is a police case file. The case abandoned. Too many police officers were on the case were brutally murdered by that thing. It doesn't want anyone knowing about that story. I know that telling the story got me killed, but I don't care. I just want the world to know about what happened. I'm not going to purchase a gun and never stay in one location for too long, unless you're absolutely sure you killed that thing, because that thing will be after you. Once you're sure it's dead, show all these tapes to the world so they know the story of Jimmy without being killed. Thank you! With that, the last tape popped out the VHS, and that's when me and Hugh smelled smoke. We looked behind us and saw that thing had twisted the pull of the knob so fiercely that it caused a spark to set off the fire to the chair. Then the door and eventually the whole house set fire. The creature jumped through the fire. No, I could only see a shadow due to the fire cascading on it. Our only option was to jump out the window. We somehow didn't break any bones. It wasn't until we made it to my house that we realized that we didn't get any tapes, and since Hugh's house burned to the ground in the fire, it was likely we weren't going to get the chance to get them back. Don't get me wrong, I'm clearly fine with that. It's not like I was planning to show those tapes to the world. What could we be showing the world a story that meaningless to anyway? Anyways, since what happened a few days ago, me and Hugh both purchased Glocks. We've been waiting for that thing. Hugh is currently staring at a nearby hotel. The thing hasn't found me yet, and every night I hear scratching at the window. And sometimes I see shadows in my house. Oh my god, that gives me an idea. Jimmy locked me in the basement of Epstein's Island.